On a quiet suburban street in Louisville, Kentucky, on a seemingly ordinary August afternoon in 2023, neighbors began to hear something that shattered the peace. It was a woman's voice, desperate and terrified, screaming for help from the second-floor window of a modest home. When police arrived, they found the house was barricaded, a fortress locked from the inside. The woman appeared at the broken window, and the officers saw a sight of medieval horror in the middle of modern America. A thick, heavy chain was wrapped around her neck, secured with a padlock. This was the beginning of a tense, dramatic rescue, a story that would reveal a hidden nightmare of domestic terror and the incredible bravery of a woman who refused to be silenced. But before we start our story, smash that like button, make sure you're subscribed, and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any of our new, incredible stories. To understand the events of that day, we must first understand the story that led up to it. This was not a random act of violence. It was the terrifying culmination of a relationship defined by control and abuse. The woman trapped on the second floor was Jada Hurdle, a young mother. The man who had put the chain around her neck was her partner and the father of her child, 36-year-old Moises May. For a long time, their life together had been a private, escalating nightmare. The story that emerged after Jada's rescue was a classic and tragic tale of domestic violence. It began with emotional control and manipulation, and slowly, over months, escalated to physical abuse. Jada had tried to leave him, had tried to escape the cycle of violence, but like so many victims, she was trapped by a complex web of fear, manipulation, and a desire to keep her family together for the sake of their young child. The cycle of domestic abuse is a well-documented and insidious pattern of behavior. It is rarely about a single act of violence, but about establishing a system of power and coercive control. The abuser works to isolate the victim from their friends and family, to control their finances, and to chip away at their self-esteem, making them feel dependent and helpless. This psychological abuse is often punctuated by acts of physical violence, which are then followed by periods of remorse and promises to change, a phase known as honeymooning. This vicious cycle creates a powerful and toxic bond, leaving the victim feeling confused, trapped, and often blaming themselves for the abuse. For Jada, this was her reality. She was living in a private prison long before her partner put a physical chain around her neck. On the day of the incident, the cycle reached its breaking point. A heated argument erupted between Jada and Moises. The argument escalated, and Moises allegedly flew into a rage. He physically assaulted Jada, and then he decided to make her prison a literal one. He took a heavy-duty chain and a master lock padlock. He wrapped the chain around Jada's neck and secured it. He then used a bolt to fasten the other end of the chain to the floor of their child's bedroom. She was now physically tethered to the house, a prisoner in her own home. Believing she was completely subdued and unable to escape, Moises May then barricaded the doors from the inside and left the house, leaving Jada chained to the floor like an animal. But he had underestimated her will to survive. Left alone in the terrifying silence of the house, Jada knew this was a moment of life or death. She refused to give up. With the chain restricting her movement, she managed to crawl to the second-floor bedroom window. The window was closed. Using all her strength, she managed to break the glass, cutting herself in the process, but creating an opening to the outside world. She pushed her head through the broken pane of glass and began to scream for help, her desperate cries for salvation shattering the quiet afternoon of the peaceful suburban neighborhood. The first 911 call came in from a neighbor who had heard the screams and saw the woman in the window. The dispatcher's voice was calm and professional, but the information relayed to the responding officers was chilling. A woman was being held against her will, possibly injured. Officers from the Louisville Metro Police Department were dispatched to the scene immediately. When the first patrol car arrived, the officers were met with a tense and confusing situation. They could see Jada in the second-floor window, and she was clearly in distress. They approached the front door of the house and tried to enter. It was locked and would not budge. They moved to the back door and found it similarly secured. From the way the doors were braced, it was clear they had been barricaded from the inside. The officers were locked out. They had a victim in plain sight, but they had no way to get to her. As they searched the perimeter of the house, looking for another way in, time was running out. The suspect could return at any moment. As the officers were assessing the situation, preparing to use a battering ram to breach the front door, a moment of incredible community spirit occurred. A neighbor, seeing the officers struggle, ran from his own home carrying a large extension ladder. He was a Good Samaritan, an ordinary citizen stepping up in a moment of crisis, took the ladder and propped it against the side of the house, its top rungs reaching the now empty, broken window on the second floor. They now had a way in. The rescue was about to begin. One of the officers, a member of the LMPD's SWAT team, began the precarious climb up to the second-floor window. As he ascended, his Bodycam footage captured the tense and desperate scene. He reached the top and carefully navigated the jagged, broken glass of the window frame, swinging himself into the bedroom. And there, he was met with the full, horrifying reality of Jada's imprisonment. Heavy metal chain was wrapped around her neck, pulled taut, and secured with a heavy-duty. The officer's voice on the radio was a mixture of professional calm and utter disbelief as he described the scene to his colleagues below. It was a sight of medieval cruelty in a 20th-century child's bedroom. The officer knew that waiting for a specialist with a key or combination was not an option. The suspect could return at any moment. He made a quick decision. He called for a tool, something with enough force to break the lock or the chain itself. Another officer on the ground procured a hatchet from his patrol car. The hatchet was sent up the ladder and passed through the window. The first officer then set to work, placing the padlock on a solid section of the floor. With a loud crack, the shackle of the padlock broke. She was free. The moments that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Other officers, now able to breach the front door, swarmed into the house and secured the scene. Emergency medical services and the fire department arrived. The paramedics immediately began to treat Jada for dehydration and the injuries she had sustained, including the lacerations from the broken window and the deep, painful abrasions the chain had left on her neck. Her survival a direct result of her own incredible courage and the quick response of her neighbors and the police. With the victim secure, the focus of the investigation shifted entirely to finding the man responsible, Moises May. An immediate manhunt was launched. His description and vehicle information were broadcast to law enforcement all across the state. For 2 days, he remained a fugitive. Then, on August 18, 2023, he was located and arrested without incident. The legal process that followed revealed the full extent of his crimes. Moises May was charged with a litany of serious offenses, including kidnapping, which in this case was a domestic violence-related crime, wanton endangerment, assault, unlawful imprisonment, and terroristic threatening. He was held on a 100-0 cash bond. The case highlighted the extreme and often hidden dangers of domestic violence. Jada's story was not one of a random kidnapping, but the terrifying peak of an abusive relationship, a final, brutal attempt by a perpetrator to exert absolute control over his victim. But the lasting legacy of this story is not one of victimization. It is one of incredible heroism. First and foremost, the hero of this story is Jada Hurdle herself. Trapped in an impossible situation, she did not give in to despair. She fought back. Her decision to break that window and scream for help, an act of immense bravery in the face of terror, is the sole reason she is alive today. Her story is a powerful testament to the strength of the human will to survive. But the story also highlights the critical importance of community. It was her neighbors who heard her cries and did not dismiss them. They took action and made the call that brought help to her door. And it was the quick-thinking Good Samaritan, the neighbor who brought the ladder, whose simple act of assistance provided the police with the crucial tool they needed to perform the rescue. It is a profound reminder that in moments of crisis, the actions of ordinary people can make the difference between life and death. The story of Jada Hurdle's rescue is a dark tale of violence and control, but it is ultimately illuminated by the bright light of a survivor's courage and a community's compassion.